As we have been doing, this is 5 weeks now since we hit that time that it was from the beginning of the pandemic to a time that felt like it was a significant tipping point. It's interesting, it was only 5 weeks, and already I have people saying, oh wait, the rates are going up. Are we going to do, what do we do? And so I placed this counter to acknowledge that it was 104 weeks until we reached about 2 years from the time of the beginning of the pandemic. As we move forward, may we go from strength to strength. Even if COVID-19 is in our midst, may we find ways with Ruach and Koach to continue our community moving forward, finding ways of taking care of each other with peace and grace. It is 5 weeks since that moment. As I also mentioned from at the top, that this is Shabbat HaGadol, this is the Shabbat before Pesach, and I need the youngest person in the room. Oh, look, it's River. So River, you're the youngest person in the room. I need you up here first. Bring the microphone. Come on up for a second. This is going to work out beautifully. We could not have planned this better. No, you couldn't. Okay, so River, Passover's coming up. And are you the youngest child in your, and you got to talk to the microphone, are you the youngest child in your house?
No.
Okay. What is the responsibility of the youngest child at the Seder?
They have to ask the 4 questions.
Correct. And you said on Wednesday, I'm not ever the youngest person because I always have, that you always have Gage with you, right?
Yes.
And therefore I took that to mean, well, I don't have the pressure, I don't have to worry about knowing the 4 questions. Little did you realize that you would be coming to Shabbat services, you would be the youngest person, and therefore have to do the 4 questions.
Actually, it's technically 1 question.
That is true. Ready?
Okay.
Can we? Ma nishtana. I'm the second.
I forgot.
Oh, I'm the second. Yeah, I'm the second youngest in the room. I bet if we got started, you could do it. Okay, so just remember this. You can go back to the text station. But River, that moment where you're like, wait, but I forgot it, right? And I know that you could pull out a Haggadah, you could pull it up on your phone, you could find those resources. You could. And I bet if we started singing it would come back to you. There is, so think about that for a moment. We have 1 question and 4 statements that is these Arba Kashot, these 4 challenges that are part of Pesach. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot, mikol halelot. We can stop. Even the non-singers in the room started nodding and moving, right? The 4 questions are absolutely extraordinary because on some level it doesn't matter what they say. There is rhythm, there is rhyme, there is flow with the music and with the words that just kind of feels like it fits your tongue. We call it kind of Mi Sinai. It's like something from Sinai. It's one of the first things we teach our children. My question to you all is, why do we do that? Why do we even worry about what, is the youngest child at the table? You all know where that comes from. So Charlie says Lador Vador, and you're absolutely right, but it's not just that we have an instruction in the Gada that says Lador Vador, that each and every generation should feel as if they are going out from Egypt. Just before that, it says in Torah, in Exodus 12, in the story of the Exodus, as they are getting ready to come out, one of the last instructions that God gives to Moses, God says, when your sons ask, why are you doing this? Be ready to tell them the story. And look what we have built in to our Seder and into our Haggadah. We teach our kids from the time that they're first able to speak, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh Mikol Halelot. We teach them to ask us the question, so we have to answer and we tell the story. And of course, we don't just tell the story for our kids, we tell it for ourselves. Because every time you tell that story, every time we do all of these rituals of dipping the greens into salt water, every time we make the charoset and eat the charoset and eat the maror, the bitter herbs, each time we point at that, at the shank bone, even every time we point at the mysterious egg, which is one of the most exciting parts of the Seder plate to eat and has no purpose on the Seder plate other than to be there to entertain the kids, to get them the challenge of trying to unpeel the thing. Right? Really. There's all sorts of stuff to the egg.
It's the only thing we're focused on.
That is the only thing River focuses on. That is Passover. We set it up with this ritual that we make sure our kids learn, that is one of those things that you walk around. How many of you now this week, because I'm singing it here, are going to walk out of here or walk around cleaning your house going, it's an earworm. It just captures our attention and it sits in us, in our heart, and in our mind. In the youngest age, so that we can tell the story. I share that with you. I really want you to be thinking about that because I am confronted by a whole different issue. And I could be preaching to the choir, and I am not trying to shame anyone, but I have seen over the course of my time something that absolutely concerns me. As much as a situation of not teaching the 4 questions and not doing Passover, I have noticed over the years that it is harder and harder to find children and grandchildren that are comfortable saying Kaddish, that are comfortable going to the cemetery to place a stone of memory, to stop and celebrate and observe yard sites, to come to the shul for Yisker. And it is the same thing, but different. What are we observing with Passover? The exodus of the people of Israel, remembering us going from slavery and degradation to freedom and praise. That's why we want our kids to ask, because when they ask us that question, we can tell that story of going up. And why do we say Kaddish and have Yisker and light yard-side candles and have memorial plaques in synagogues? Because it's the opposite. It's that time where we confront the finite parts of our lives, when we confront the loss of our loved ones, where we are quite literally felt the fabric of our life torn, and we are trying to put it back together and using. Why is Manish not get in our ear? Because of its rhythm and its rhyme and the flow of the words. Why does Kaddish get into our ear in that same way? Because Yitka Dalva, Yitka Dasha Meraba, Bialma Divrach Yurte. It's got rhythm. It's got rhyme. I noticed one time I was in here with a family, and what was I hearing? Yitka Dalva, Yitka Dasha. It's a heartbeat. It has that same kind of power. I have witnessed, I have watched, where it is not getting passed from one generation to the next, or, and River, I appreciate you letting me pick on you just a little bit tonight. River's got this big smile on his face. He is a tremendous student and a great sport. He is a year away from bar mitzvah, and yet he is the one charges in on Friday night, ready to run the cameras for our congregation. That's River for you. River did say to me earlier this week, oh, I don't have to worry about the 4 questions because Gage has to say them. And I can only poke at River a little bit because many of you know I went to California to the CCAR convention. And one of the beautiful, wonderful things about the CCR convention is you get an opportunity to see the people that you were ordained with. And my class actually sent out an email and got organized that in the first night that we were there, the second night we were there, we were all going to go, the class of 2001, which I was the year before I was ordained, was the group I was in Israel with, we were all going to go out to dinner. And there were about 5 or 6 of us, 7 of us that had joined together in San Diego. We all pile out and we all get in the car, and the first thing that happens when I got in the car was what? Michael, you're still the youngest. And I'm like, I'm 47. We were ordained 20 years ago. They're like, yeah, we're all in our 50s. We were ordained 20 years ago. We all age at the same rate. You're still the youngest. It's one of those things that when you show up at Pesach or at the CCR convention, when you show up somewhere, you never know when you're going to be the youngest. Learn the 4 questions. Okay. I just want to make sure they can hear me. Yes, they're fine on Zoom. I say that with a big smile on my face, but remember what I just said about Kaddish. You never know when you're going to be the only one there to say Kaddish. You never know when, and it's that teaching piece of it. I was thinking about that with River. Sometimes you don't just learn it because you're going to do it. Sometimes you learn it because you're going to be the one to teach it. I'm up here with my mind wheels spinning, thinking of how do I look out at this community, at this congregation, and say, how do we find where there are young people whose families might not be comfortable with Kaddish, or might not observe yard sites, or not come for Yizkor, where they can feel like they're not just, oh, show up for Yizkor, but they get an invitation. That somebody is lighting a yard site candle and they reach out to a member of our congregation and they say, I'm lighting for my family. I don't want to do it alone. Come and light a yard site candle and say Kaddish with me. How do we find these ways of not just taking responsibility for saying Kaddish, but for being the ones, the father has to, and I say father has to teach the son because that's Torah in my head, what's really on my lips, that the parent has to teach the kid. And I'll be the first to tell you, it's never really the parent teaching the kid. How often my kids teach me in the process of me trying to teach them. Which I humbly and fully admit and appreciate. Just as vital as it is when our people of Israel came out of Egypt, when we made that exodus with signs and portents, think of what had to be done to the people of Egypt with all of those plagues just to get us out. And here we are in freedom, and we want to remember going from slavery and bondage to praise and did I say freedom and slavery? Slavery and degradation to praise and freedom. Every time it comes, we make sure our kids can say the 4 questions and sing them with them proudly. Let us do the same when it's the passage of an individual from this world into the world to come, or those moments of anniversary of those journeys, of those passing. It is a central part of Judaism. We even said it earlier. Let us honor the generations that come before. One of the things we talk about, how many times somebody actually dies. There's the time they breathe their last breath. There's the time when the last person who knew their name, and it's the time when their last thing that they touched made an impression for on the world disappears. Kaddish is part of our people's armor against that, push against that, of making sure door by door, generation to generation, we carry that ruach, that koach, that spirit, and that strength forward. As we prepare for Pesach, as we prepare to gather at tables to tell that story, I offer you that challenge. If you don't know Kaddish or you don't feel comfortable with Kaddish, find a teacher. I know a guy. If you are one that does stop for yard sites, that does come to Yizkor, look for opportunities to bring someone else along. Said it earlier today. Moses comes to talk to God, Shmuel comes to talk to Moshe, and Izzy comes for the brownies. There are people that doing those rituals for is really natural. If you haven't noticed, I am not a natural singer. Why do I sing the songs, do I know? Because I've heard them over and over again, because I went to places where people loved singing and felt warm, welcomed and included and learned to sing those songs. There are so many people that sang Kaddish, that lighting a yahrzeit candle, that coming to Yizkor are exactly the same. They might feel strange about the ritual. They might feel uncomfortable with the words. They might not know which God they're saying these words to or how to feel about their ancestors that they're remembering. We gather at a table for Seder so we can experience the Exodus together. Let us find ways of doing these important, valuable acts of memory, giving each other assurance, giving each other support, of being the one to say amen, to hear the stories of loved ones, so that we can bring the shalom not of now, but the shalom of past and present and future, where across time and space, all of our energy becomes shalom, wholeness, harmony, and peace. Amen? Amen. Shabbat shalom.